Given that it's almost Halloween time, I figured I'd delve back into a topic that I actually haven't touched in a while. I used to talk about it quite a bit a few years back when I was more certain about some of the insights that I would gain through my personal Ethan experiences. I've talked about this a little bit before, how there's this condition or like this overarching infinite quote unquote experience, which is not an experience per se. It's more like experience itself, but even that sort of becomes like trivial and self-inclusive in a lot of ways. So even referring to it in that sort of a sense becomes like a semantic error. But anyways, there's that overarching condition, but then here as Ethan in this life, I still have personal experiences, just like everybody else. I eat, sleep, talk, work, do all that. I mean, I even have like dreamless sleep despite the fact that the condition and the experiences and all that is still happening. So I do have a very ordinary personal life. Well, maybe not ordinary per se. I mean, there is a lot of strange occurrences that happen within it, but just a standard, ordinary human life. But with that said, within that ordinary human life of that I'm just living here, yeah, I do have paranormal, or as I call them, spiritual experiences. And I mean, they really amped up around age 11. There were some before that, though, which weren't really in the context of spiritual experiences. So I tend to not say that it started before age 11. I tend to just say that it started at age 11 because the few spiritual experiences that happened before that age weren't really within a spiritual context. I just saw them more as like dreams, and they were, not as intense, not as impactful or influential on this life of mine here. So, yeah, really it intensified at that age, 11 years old. And I've talked about that a little bit before, but I used to talk about it a lot more on this channel. And so I'm thinking I'm going to post some videos about some of those topics over on the Everything Explained site, which I can link to down below, and start delving into that topic just for fun since it is almost Halloween. Now, as I delve into these topics again, we need to establish a new context around them, which is recently, as I've said before, I've gained a much more ordinary, sort of mundane worldview. Like, okay, so you could say my overarching quote unquote worldview is anythingness, but that's not really a worldview per se because it's compatible with any and every worldview. So it's ontologically independent, meaning it's not dependent upon or committed to any specific ontology or any specific view of existence. That's all ontology means. It's the study of existence. So an ontological position is just a worldview, right? It's a certain view that somebody has about reality. So I can't really call my condition or my anythingness a worldview for that reason. It's ontologically independent. But within that, of course, since it is compatible with any and all worldviews and any and all types of metaphysics, of course, within that you can have a certain metaphysical position, like a certain way that you do view the world or a certain ontological stance that you have. And that has become much more ordinary. Recently, I am more skeptical of my own experiences and stuff like that. And so as I delve back into these paranormal and spiritual topics, we're going to talk about them in a much more open-minded context. As I've said before, a lot of people confuse open-mindedness to mean, oh, you just believe in like taboo stuff. Like you believe in the paranormal stuff and you're not skeptical. But that's just reverse closed-mindedness. That's not really open-mindedness. True open-mindedness is not committed to either a non-spiritual view or a spiritual view. It's open to whichever is the case, right? That's why it's called open-mindedness. So as I delve into some of these experiences again, what we need to remember is that we have to be open to, okay, yeah, maybe they are genuinely spiritual or paranormal experiences, but we also have to be open to the possibility that maybe I, as Ethan, just have some sort of mental condition that causes me to have the experiences. Or we could even say, maybe they're both one and the same. Maybe a mental condition is synonymous with paranormal experience such that, you can't really distinguish between the two. But whichever one of those answers it is, I'm just here to talk about the experiences themselves. Whether or not they are real or just hallucinations or both. Maybe you want to say that hallucinations are real, or the nature of reality is that it's just one big hallucination. Again, we're being ontologically independent with all this. So you do not have to commit to any specific ontological position in order to enjoy hearing about some of these stories. And so I'll talk about them a little bit here, kind of cover the basics, but then a lot of these stories, again, they're going to be covered over on the site. There's no videos of them up yet as of the making of this video. It's just this is more of an announcement that I'll be getting back into them and what the whole context is going to be. So yeah, remember that. Just be open to whatever they are. This is something that I actually do kind of want to get psychologically studied for. Is there something odd neurologically about this brain, Ethan's brain? Is there something odd psychologically going on there, right? Or is everything just normal and it's just a very different type of subjective experience that I have here in this life? It could be any of those, but nevertheless, I do have an intense history with these types of things. Here's a disclaimer. I know some people in my audience, my audience tends to be a little bit more spiritually inclined. Then again, I have a very small audience as of the making of this video, at least, whether or not it grows. But with that said, I imagine that because a few people in my audience are more spiritually inclined, a lot of you would have heard of, obviously Sadhguru is very famous, very popular, Teal Swan, Dolores Cannon, Sylvia Brown. I mean, there's all these popular spiritual teachers who talk either a little bit or a lot of it about these types of paranormal subjects. And especially people like Dolores Cannon and Teal Swan, they'll really get heavy into that sort of stuff. I mean, they'll say like, oh yeah, aliens are around me all the time, or they'll even say that they're an alien from an alien planet. They'll say all these things. Yeah, my history with paranormal experience is even more jam-packed than theirs, I would say. Now, granted, technically I can't say that for sure, given that, Ethan's experience is not their experience. But just if going off of their stories alone is any sort of accurate gauge as to how intense that inner life of theirs is, yeah, mine is very jam-packed by comparison, which would strike a lot of people as odd because, people say I talk in a very intellectual, sort of rational tone. So it seems like I would be the exact opposite of a Teal Swan. But the irony is I talk in this very sort of intellectual, organized tone because I've taken those sorts of spiritual experiences full circle on themselves. I've picture if you started off as skeptical, went through a ton of spiritual experiences, and you experienced so much strangeness that you were kind of just open to them being anything, real or not, and so that kind of looped you back around to skepticism. Not necessarily saying that's been my trajectory, that's just more of like an image to get you to picture where my mental state is at in terms of thinking about them, right? Like, I'm at that skeptical position, not because I lack experience with this stuff, but because I've had so much bizarre experience with it that none of the possibilities about what they are really faze me. Okay, maybe they're just hallucinations created by chemicals in the brain. Sounds strange. It's not strange to me. Okay, maybe that's too materialistic or physicalistic for you. Maybe there really are spiritual realms and alien worlds, and all these beings are real in the sense that there is really an experience of what it is like to be them. There's a mind behind their eyes communicating with yours. Both minds could be one or separate. Doesn't really matter, dualistic or non-dualistic, just these beings are real. That possibility is not at all strange to me either. So whichever one it is, I'm just open to it. So yeah, there's a lot to unpack here because I have such a long background with it. I'll be covering a lot of the dreams I had before age 11. I would encounter various beings in those. Very graphic dreams, to be honest, especially for like a 3-year old. But again, those didn't have much of a spiritual context until 11 years old. By the time I got to that age, then it was, a daily thing. It was, just a part of my waking experience as Ethan that, I would talk to beings, I would meet beings. And so what I can say is that I have not heard about or read about any mythological or folkloric entities that I have not had a personal experience with. I realize that's a bold claim, but yeah, it's that jam packed, it's that full, which is why I can't just divulge it all in this one video. This video has to more or less just be an introduction to that site, but not even just an introduction. Really I am getting into some of the meat of it here in this video in terms of the background, like how I think about these things, at least currently, and how extensive the background is, so that you kind of know what to expect as I talk about these topics again. Now, the thing is, why talk about the topics? I mean, they're not really important per se, right? Like, it's not practical to your life. I mean, already all of my content is not really practical to your life. Even the more deeply mystical stuff, that's like the core of quote unquote spirituality, and even those topics of mine are not really practical or beneficial per se. So already my content is very impractical for the most part. So why just add more impracticality on top of that? Why talk about these sorts of personal paranormal experiences? Well, like I said, one, just for entertainment, but two, also, I think it helps if people who have very divergent types of experiences, if they vlog, sort of like document their experiences, because what science is all about, and really just discovery in general, what it's all about is permeating out through society and the world and getting into all the nooks and crannies of it that haven't been explored yet. So there's lots of people out there who have very divergent experiences of the world. And those rare experiences cannot be studied if those people don't come out and share them. Maybe they don't want them to be studied, and that's fair, but see, my passion and my life purpose, I think, is to share those nooks and crannies that we have yet to explore, put them on the stage. So even if my content is impractical, at least it can help in a sort of collective sense. I guess that's the way I want to put it. My content, since it's not practical, it can't really help anybody individually in their lives, like their day-to-day lives. It can't really benefit them directly on that individual level, but maybe on a sort of collectivistic level, like helping us understand the nature of psychology or neurology or these types of experiences, that can really add to a sort of advancement there on a collective stage, even if it doesn't do anything beneficial on an individualistic stage. So maybe instead of saying it's impractical for me to share this stuff on my channel, maybe I should just say it's not practical on an individual level. Maybe it's potentially practical on a collective level. But who knows? You can't really say for sure unless you come out and share it and are willing to get yourself analyzed. And certainly I am willing to get myself psychologically analyzed. Like I said, that is something that I'm looking into. I've already talked to a couple psychiatrists, but it still has yet to really turn into like a case study. But it is moving in that direction. So this isn't just like an empty vow that I'm taking. Like I have started to progress in that direction of figuring out what this stuff is, which as I get results, I'll share more in the future. So right now it's kind of just a vague, like, yeah, I'm starting to do this, but as it unfolds through time, I'll have more to actually share with you as to what's being found out, if anything. So yeah, that's a major reason as to why I still am willing to talk about this stuff, even if it doesn't benefit anybody watching the video directly. So hopefully you enjoy them, but with that said, one more thing to really remember about these experiences, again, going back to the fact that there's this bold claim behind them that, you know, I've kind of just had interactions with all sorts of mythological and folkloric and alien entities and all that. Some of them are graphic. It's not like standard, rosy fairy tale stuff. I mean, the way I like to put it is, again, going back to examples like Dolores Cannon. I haven't looked into their content all that much. Like, I'm not like a big fan of Teal Swan and Dolores Cannon and all them. I don't really relate to them per se. I mean, I guess in a sense I relate to everybody just because of how broad my condition is. But just like conventionally speaking, I don't really relate to them. I would kind of like if they were a little bit more rigorous in their self-analysis of their own experiences, so I don't tend to associate with them. So for that reason, I haven't looked at a lot of their content. But from what I have seen, it seems like a lot of them have, very positive, very rosy experiences with this stuff. Some people like Teal Swan will say, of course, yeah, they've had very deeply negative experiences with it as well. And some people I've talked to have had only negative experiences with the paranormal. But since my range is so broad, I've had it very extreme in both directions. So there's a lot of very rosy, flowery, sort of beautiful, aesthetic, positive experiences that I've had spiritually over the years as Ethan. But then there's a lot of, again, very graphic and negative ones that are very intense and not in a good way. But that's just the full range, right? Reality doesn't have any biases, so you're going to experience good stuff, you're going to experience bad stuff, or at least stuff that you consider bad, whether it's somebody else's good, who could say. But yeah, it is a wide range for that reason. So, some of the stories maybe you'll enjoy, some you won't. I don't know. It's probably going to be quite a mixed bag. Anyways, hopefully you enjoyed this video despite the fact that it was really just going into the background of it rather than any specific stories. But each of the stories, first of all, there's too many of them, but then each of the stories themselves can also be so long that they can be their own video. So that's something to put on the site rather than, here on the channel. This channel is more for just like a basic introduction to my work, and then the site will be for extending that, right? And the more extensive content. All right, so let me know if you have any questions about anything I mentioned here or before. If not, I'll see you all next time. Create a nice day.